All right, we'll cover just a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, thanks for joining us today. We will be respectful of your time, so we'll cruise through this content and then leave plenty of time for Q&A. Just a couple of quick things. Feel free to raise your hand by clicking the button in Zoom. And feel free to just type questions in the Q&A as we go along. And then we can address all those at the end of the webinar. Also, if something's wrong or you can't see the screen, just feel free to post in the chat so we can see. And with that, I think we're ready. Are you ready, Dan?
Certainly am, Eric.
All right. So here's just a quick overview of what we'll cover today. So we'll just do quick introductions. We'll do an overview of lead qualification at Pachyderm and the process there. So Dan will walk us through that. And then Dan and I will talk through the various ways that data gets trapped in silos in the stack and talk through some of the specific ways that that was happening at Pachyderm. And then we'll talk about a really cool tool called Warehouse Actions from RudderStack that Pachyderm uses to streamline their lead qualification process. So with that, let's jump in. Dan, I'm going to let you, you're the star of the show, so I'm going to let you go first.
Thanks, Eric. So hi, everyone. I'm Dan Baker. I work at Pachyderm. I'm kind of in marketing ops, like data ops, that kind of area. My role involves making sure everyone in every team internally within Pachyderm has the right data to do their job as effectively as they can. I kind of came across RudderStack a while back while really interested in kind of consuming event data for various websites I was working on at the time, and it's proved to be a great successful product for where we're going with the Pachyderm customer data platform.
Great. And just a little bit of detail on what Pachyderm does.
So probably the best description is Pachyderm's like an enterprise grade, like open source data science platform that makes explainable and repeatable and scalable ML and AI like a reality. We run a SaaS product, like as well as having the open source version. And we have like several quite large clients running on both open source, enterprise, and our SaaS version.
That's really cool. I can say firsthand, you should check out Pachyderm if you need tooling around your data science workflow. I'm Eric. I'm the Director of Customer Success at RudderStack, and I do a lot of work with many teams, but I have the privilege of working with customers like Pachyderm and tons of other customers who are trying to build data infrastructure. Quick overview on RudderStack. So RudderStack helps you easily build customer data pipelines. So we do that in a number of ways in the stack. So event streaming, so from real-time use cases to other use cases with event streams. We also can pull structured data from cloud sources. And then what we'll talk about today, one of our most exciting features is Warehouse Actions, which allows you to pull tables from your warehouse and turn them into an event stream. So that's RudderStack. So let's dive in. Lead qualification at Pachyderm. So Dan, talk us through the challenges you were having in terms of the lead qualification process. And I think the context of what you were doing will be helpful. I know we have a lot of technical people in the audience, but the business case I think is really helpful.
So yeah, I think as is a pretty like typical kind of business case that we've got a bunch of cloud services, data being generated in those services via like incoming leads or kind of outgoing communication with those leads or any of those kind of those general marketing type processes and sales processes. And we were kind of looking for a solution. We're having issues with getting kind of like aggregated data from all of those cloud sources back into specific cloud sources. So, you know, we'd want to know, like in this case, we'd want to know like metrics on our SaaS, our Pack Hub, and know stuff like total workspaces created. So this is like an internal value of how onboarded a customer is, and like, you know, in the same case, like last workspace creation day, and like account spend on or within the hub. And aside from that, we'd also want to know like how engaged like open source users were in our Slack community, and like many more like use cases for this that we haven't even explored yet. But like we kind of know where we're going with this, and know where our problems were. And until this point, we were like spending our time like looking around through Slack and through like hub database records, like or Metabase or those kind of tools, and we were trying to like onboard our own internal people into various tools that they weren't really comfortable with. So, you know, salespeople using Metabase isn't ideal, and people using Slack as a source for understanding what a customer's doing really isn't ideal either. We need to kind of combine that stuff in one place to give this kind of unified view or on a particular customer or lead. And so that was our issue, and that's how we kind of came across what RudderStack were doing with the warehouse actions, and kind of solve that via that solution.
Great. And just a quick question on that. Your experience from sort of, I mean, you have a wide purview because you work on the data and the ops side of things. What were the conversations like internally as people were feeling the pain of this? And did that translate into a lot of requests, you know, for data from your team?
Yeah, I think there was just an internal lack of understanding, really, and it became obvious that we needed to like combine this stuff in one form. And what I was seeing was that, like, yeah, we could go down the dashboard route and we could give people all of this data in one place, but it was more about like certain teams were happy with the tools that we were using. So, you know, marketing were happy with using HubSpot, sales were happy with using Salesforce. Neither wanted to switch to each other, and it became more about let's get that aggregated data or that unified view of data back into those tools so that people can see like a true view of that customer at that point. Sure. And so, yeah, like I guess it was more about like people not really wanting to budge from where they were at. Because it's just outside their normal workflow, you know.
Sure. That is that's really helpful context. So Dan and I thought it'd be good to quickly run through before we get to the specific use case with warehouse actions, and Dan can talk through their stack, and which is really cool. I thought we'd just quickly go through how data gets siloed in the stack. This is something I think every company experiences on some level. So I'll just go through a quick overview, and then Dan, maybe you can talk about the dynamic of this at Pachyderm. So this is something that I think is really, really common at a lot of companies. So data trapped in cloud tools. So you have data flowing from websites, apps, internal systems, et cetera. And usually that lives in some sort of cloud tool set, right? So as Dan was saying, you know, maybe marketing is using a tool like HubSpot or Marketo, sales is using Salesforce, and then, you know, the marketing team is using Google Analytics and Google Ads. And what ends up happening is you have each of those driving reporting in different ways. And then of course that creates misalignment, right? Because not everyone is using the exact same definitions and the reporting's different, and you have all these challenges. And then, you know, when data is trapped in cloud tools and you have that misalignment and it's hard to do the analysis, to your point, Dan, I think a lot of companies end up in a place where you're just trying to get data out of a lot of those systems. And as crazy as it sounds, a lot of it just ends up in spreadsheets because you have to make decisions, you have to hit quarterly numbers, but that's not scalable, especially, you know, with the amount of data that many companies are collecting. Can you talk about just briefly a couple of examples of what were the problems caused by data being trapped in cloud tools?
Yeah, as you quite rightly said, like Eric, the obvious go-to at this point is that you pull data directly from these sources, these tools into like spreadsheets. Like, you know, Google Sheets is a great source for that kind of stuff. And like, you know, we all know there's like integrations with all of these tools with Google Sheets, and we can get data out and we can present it to the right people. It doesn't allow the joining of that data, which is like a key part from our perspective. And it was more about it's a kind of twofold approach, right? So people want to use the tool they're already using, like I mentioned previously, like whether it's HubSpot, Salesforce, whatever tool everyone's used to using. And that might be in some cases, like might be people that are just used to using Google Sheets, right? So let's not discount that as a great way of presenting data. But you want to get that data. Yeah, you not only want the data from those sources just to be a like direct export. You want to be able to join that stuff and give people that more true view of that picture. And that's exactly what we were seeing at Pachyderm. Like it's you know, like when it comes to kind of our hub system, like our SaaS product, like that database was kind of more closed off in the sense that it was just a Postgres database, and and a lot of people don't have access to that, and there weren't the tools in place just for directly exporting to Google Sheets, and we needed that data in all those other tools. So
sure. Well, so let's say you get the data unified. So as Dan and I were talking before the webinar, we said, okay, well, one of the great things about, you know, modern stacks is you can solve that problem by, you know, either sending data directly from your websites and apps to the warehouse, which is really common, but then also pulling data from those tools into your warehouse. So now you have unified data, and you can do the analysis. So Dan, would love to know what that process is like for you, but then also you were talking about how, even though that was really helpful, you still face the problem of teams wanting that data in their own tools, which, you know, sort of, even though you've unified it and solved the problem of data being trapped in cloud tools, you get it out of there and into the warehouse, but then the analysis is sort of trapped in the warehouse, which is its own unique problem.
Yeah, like exactly what you said there, Eric. Like moreover, like the more tools you put in front of any kind of team, the less they're going to get used. You know, like people are comfortable with one, possibly two, possibly three tools that they use on a daily basis. But the more stuff we chuck at them, the less it's going to get used. And we see this with an awful lot of companies see this with like dashboards. They're great from a high level overview, but they don't really get used in the way that you would expect on a daily basis by most of the internal teams. And so, like from our perspective, we were trying to get that that data not only to be visible outside of those dashboards, but more to be actionable outside of those dashboards. You know, like within marketing drips, within you know, Salesforce reports, so that we can see the status of a lead, how active they are, what they're doing, essentially lead score based on our own internal metrics, to kind of build a bigger picture of that. And that was definitely an issue, you know, and like the idea of having that data in the database is great, and the dashboards are great, but it feels like where we were at maybe like 10 years ago, like maybe not 10 years, maybe 5 years ago. That was kind of the state of play as a standard thing 5 years ago. And I think we need to move on from that and being a place where that data is now freely available in all tools that need that data.
Sure.
And that,
yeah, it's interesting. We've heard lots of companies talk about how unified business intelligence from the warehouse is really powerful because it can really change decision making in a powerful way. But it's hard to use that to drive the actual tactical customer journey, like you said, you know, triggering marketing emails or helping, you know, SDRs prioritize. Well, let's talk about how you broke those data silos at Pachyderm. So we'll talk about both of those use cases because you had data trapped in the cloud tools and then data trapped, you know, or analysis trapped in the warehouse. So talk through, you know, how you use different tools to get the data out of the cloud silos, and then how you got it from the warehouse back into the tools that teams were using?
Yeah, so I kind of looked at this as being a problem from like the get-go, really, with working on a creating a customer data platform for Pachyderm, and I knew that this was ultimately going to be a problem that I needed to solve. And like when choosing tools to kind of implement as part of our customer data platform, that was a key consideration. Like how are we going to like use this data rather than it just being sat within within our warehouse or within our BI tool, like that was a key part to it. And so like from a kind of data source perspective, like we were having issues with people not really understanding Google Analytics. Like HubSpot wasn't being really used to its full potential because people didn't know how to access that stuff inside HubSpot, and the same applies for all of those other tools. And so, as I mentioned, like the key part of that was, right, how do we get that data? Like on one side, we want that in like a dashboard so that people can see that stuff, and that works to a degree, and that was working for us to a degree. But we kind of needed that more aggregated view on that data, so like total numbers of things and like cost analysis and that kind of stuff. And so like the key part was really piping that data back into those like processing it out of the warehouse, storing it, materializing it back to the warehouse using the tool that we were using, Sigma, and then processing that back through with the warehouse actions to get that, to solve that problem that we were currently under.
Yeah. And just give us a quick overview of what does it look like to use warehouse actions. I'll do a quick demo, but would just love to hear from your perspective. I mean, what is it like to use that day to day, right? So you have some sort of analysis in the warehouse that you've derived using Sigma. And then like, what does it look like if you want to take that and push it back to the stack?
Yeah, so it's incredibly simple. Like we were imagine this was going to be way more difficult, and I'd kind of architected a bunch of solutions that were like going around the houses, or as I like to send them, like sticky tape solutions that would kind of almost work or do kind of what we needed. And like when RudderStack came to us with this feature, this like kind of saved the day, really. Like it's so easy. We just like turn it on, we point it at a view within our database that Sigma already generates. It writes that straight back out to the database. We store that, like we process data in Sigma, we store that back to the to BigQuery. And RudderStack is able to read directly from BigQuery that view, which is essentially just a SQL query, and it pipes that data back into whatever destinations we're choosing in the same way that we're already used to doing with RudderStack in terms of connecting sources and destinations. We just have like a small kind of config level that lets us map fields, so we can say like this field from the SQL result maps into this field in this destination, and we can pipe that through to like any destination that we like within RudderStack, within reason, but all the ones that we're kind of looking at, and it just unlocks that process in a really simple way. It lets us kind of do that on a scheduled basis, so we can choose a time frequency in which we want to send that data back in. And like our stuff is pretty flexible. We're kind of going maybe like on a kind of hourly in some cases, and a daily in other cases for this data, because it's not like critical at that point. But it gives us that true flexibility to use a tool that we're already used to, and in a very simple way.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll take a look at that in a second. One quick side note, you had mentioned this, and I just thought we have to include it because I thought it was such a good point that, when we were talking earlier this week, you said data validation was a big piece for you when you started to get all of the data into the warehouse and analyze it. Could you talk through the disparities that you saw, using cloud tools, and then what that looked like when you actually unified it and then started leveraging Sigma to do deeper analysis on the raw data itself?
Yeah, we're kind of in a strange position where I think like anyone who's just using these kind of cloud tools is blindly accepting the data that they're presented in the admin panels or the metrics kind of panels for those tools, without any question, and one thing that we were suspicious of, and a lot of people seem to suspicious of this, is the ad traffic data, PPC data. You know, we would spend a large budget on PPC campaigns, and we'd see a sizable number of impressions and clicks coming through to our hub product. But we were suspicious of whether that really turned it, like whether those are real clicks or whether they were like bots, or like whether the metrics being inflated. So all along we were thinking, right, well, we can go back to the kind of old school like weblog type option and try and track this down. And a lot of people online talk about doing that route, and you can claim money back from various providers and that kind of thing. But we by this point we'd already implemented RudderStack's event tracking on all of our sites. So we had, aside from the standard kind of metrics that we were getting from Google Analytics, we had page tracking metrics from RudderStack, like directly being dumped in our warehouse. And we were suddenly able to like access those and compare those to the Google ad metrics and the Google Analytics metrics, and see that there was a huge disparity in the values there. Like we're like somewhere in the region of like 10x difference between what Google were reporting to us and what we were actually seeing on our site. And so we're now looking at like building up a log of this stuff and see what we can do in terms of reclaiming some of that budget back from those tools. And so it just kind of highlights to me that, like, you know, like the blindness of our belief in the data that like we're being told by these cloud sources. And I think, like, if we can get if we can get that data straight out of the cloud source, we can at least examine that for ourselves rather than looking at the way in which they've presented that in the dashboard. And two, if we're able to kind of double check that by using some other event tracking or some other way of kind of providing a data source for that same stuff, then it gives us a way of doing that directly within the warehouse and within the BI and that side of things.
Great. Well, I know that was slightly off topic, but I thought you explained that so well, I wanted to make sure we covered that. Well, before we jumped into a quick live demo, because I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A, here's the Pachyderm Stack. And first I have to say, it was really cool just seeing this together. I think you've really architected a really cool stack here. Do you just want to give us a quick walkthrough here? And you know, I want to make sure everyone has a chance to see it, so I'll leave it up on the screen so they can ask any questions. But do you just want to give us a quick walkthrough here, Dan? Certainly.
Like we're pretty standard by looks of things. Like from my kind of research online into other kind of startups in similar position, we're definitely a victim of signing up for solutions based on internal preference to tools. So there's definitely some kind of duplication going on with like cloud sources and that kind of stuff. But you know, it does build a nice picture out of all of the standard type tools that everyone's using. And so we have a bunch of like data sources on the left hand side. The obvious ones are like event data stuff from the website, like HTTP tracking and like, you know, device kind of stuff that's going on there. And all of those are from our perspective, the data is routed into via RudderStack into BigQuery using like RudderStack's JavaScript SDK and its Go SDK for our kind of backend product. And then we also have a bunch of like cloud sources, which ideally we were looking to get the data from those into a warehouse. So we use some of those ETL tools, Stitch and Fivetran in between to do that kind of thing. And that enables us to kind of extract that stuff straight out. And I know, like, we're going to be investigating the RudderStack solution to that I've just launched, the extract tool that RudderStack have got, and I think that will kind of replace some of what we got going on with Stitch and Fivetran. We also have, as I mentioned previously, we have an open source product. We have quite a large open source user base, and part of the open source product that is completely configurable is some metrics reporting that comes back to us, and that's like a kind of call home, checks on the version, like checks to see if they need to update their product and that kind of thing. And it's and we receive quite a large volume of that. This is something that's easily configurable within our within the Pachyderm config. You can just turn this off so you're completely anonymous, or you can leave it on and you know, get the updates from us. that large volume of data we were ideally looking for to be streamed directly into BigQuery on a kind of real-time basis. And because of the volume of it and the real-time status of it, we went with a tool, Webhook Relay, which enables us to do that. And it kind of directly streams data into Google BigQuery. From that point, so we've got our data now in the cloud warehouse. We use the Sigma's tool there, Sigma Computing. And their tool is a kind of equivalent of like tools like Looker and those kind of products, but way more user friendly, like way more cost effective and way more user friendly for kind of small startups. And it enables us to like onboard people very quickly because it's a kind of like a spreadsheet type interface that everyone's kind of familiar with, but lets you lets you query, you know, billions of rows of data like real time, very as you're kind of looking at it and get the results that you want. So Sigma was a major part of that stack. The next part of that is as the whole part of this this webinar is all about, like we wanted to get that data back out of those two tools into our cloud sources, back into our cloud sources, and that's where the RudderStack warehouse actions fits in. And so we got this kind of purple line that goes back from BigQuery to RudderStack, and RudderStack pipes that data straight back into those cloud sources that we've selected via that tool, and those being at this stage like HubSpot, Salesforce, and Outreach in our case, because they're the most important in terms of communication with our customers. I think that explains everything that's going on there.
That was an extremely efficient explanation of a graph with so many lines and boxes. Just one quick clarification. So you use Sigma to build the tables that are populated in BigQuery that then get pushed back to the stack through warehouse actions.
Yeah, that's right. So like obviously Stitch and Fivetran and Webhook Relay all write the data into their own data sets in BigQuery. So we needed at that point to be able to build out a report from that with that aggregated data that we wanted to go back into our cloud sources. So like Sigma allows us to do that. It's incredibly powerful, and by default will allow us to save stuff out as a materialized view back to BigQuery, and RudderStack just ingests that. So like incredibly simple to set up and amazingly powerful.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to do a very quick demo here of warehouse actions. Can you see my screen, Dan? Just want to make sure.
Yeah, certainly can, Eric.
Great. So this is RudderStack. This is our directory of sources. So you can see we have warehouse sources down here. And I'll just show you, we won't go end to end here. But I'm just going to add Snowflake as a source here. I've already put my credentials in. So I'll choose that instance. And then you can see here that we give you the ability to select a schema and a table. So I have a schema called Eric Data. And then I am going to grab a table called multiple form submit. So let's just say we want to see people who have submitted multiple forms on our website and send that data to a downstream tool. So what you'll see here is that we pulled in a sample of this table. So this is a derived table in Snowflake. And we require an identifier, so a unique identifier. It can be the user ID or the anonymous ID. And so you can actually just select that from this drop-down list. And you can see that RudderStack already read the columns and presents you with options. So we require a unique identifier. And then you can see that that is passed through as the unique identifier. And then the other columns in the table are passed through as traits. And so what's really neat about RudderStack warehouse actions is that it takes this table and actually translates it into an event and pushes that event to your downstream tools, just as if the event were coming from an SDK, which is really, really useful in terms of sort of managing conformity and downstream destinations. One other note is that you can add keys here. So maybe you would want to say form submit count. And you can actually include additional keys if downstream tools need to receive data in a particular format. And then once you complete the setup, you can configure the schedule and add destinations. And on the schedule, say every 30 minutes or 24 hours, whatever you want, we will send this whole table as an event stream to your downstream tools and update everything. And that is how Dan gets the data from BigQuery into HubSpot, Salesforce, etc. So with that, let's do some Q&A. Would love to hear any questions from any of the attendees. And if you want, you can raise your hand by clicking the button, and I can unmute you if you want to ask your question in audio. And if not, feel free to just put your question in the Q&A, and Dan and I will address it. All right, one question came in. What was the process like of installing the SDKs, Dan? Did you work with your devs, and what did that look like?
Yeah, so there were kind of several options with that, but like it was incredibly simple. Like like my experience was previously using Segment, and obviously the RudderStack system is like completely compatible with the way in which Segment does stuff. So it's just a standard, like from the JavaScript point of view, just a standard JavaScript include in the head of the documents, and that enabled us to do all the tracking that we needed. And then you can obviously fire off custom events per element within your page or any of that kind of stuff. But like it was like, for me, it was an incredibly easy like integration point, and our front end team I don't think had any issues with that as well from a like product point of view. I mean, I did the website side of stuff in the docs, and they did the product. So
great,
very easy.
Cool. All right, we had another question come in. Where do you set the frequency of updating data to RudderStack from the data warehouse? So I can actually just show you that here. I'll click on next. So you can see the run frequency here. So it defaults to 30 minutes, but you can actually configure it to run even faster. So we have several customers who have, sort of low latency use cases. And then of course you can schedule the time as well. So that's what it looks like. And the way that works is we'll just go pull the table every 30 minutes and translate that into an event stream. Great question. Any other questions? All righty, well, we are at the 40-minute mark. And as I said, we want to be respectful of your time. Thank you to everyone who joined today. Feel free to send, we had another question come in. What's next for RudderStack? Great question. Well, I'll actually tell you the thing that we're really excited about is continuing to build out API first features. So one of the things we're working on right now that's very exciting, it's probably one of our most requested features, is we have a transformations feature that allows you to run JavaScript on the event stream that's coming through, including events that are coming from warehouse actions. And you can configure all of that in the UI. It's very powerful. But we have had many customers ask for transformations as an API so that they can manage that as part of their workflow and leverage version control. And that is going to be really, really neat. So the team is currently working on that, and we're really excited about that coming up. And you'll see more and more of that sort of translating features into APIs that make it easier to integrate the product into your existing workflow. And of course, we'll continue to add additional integrations as destinations and sources. We're over 100 now, and we do one about every 2 weeks. So Any other questions? We'll send the deck and a link to the video as well if you want to watch it. And oh, another question came in. This is great. Do we assist with integration? Yes. So the customer success team, well, I guess the question I would have is, what do you mean by integration? But in terms of setup, we work really closely with our customers to help them go live and get into production. On the integration side, if what you're referring to is an integration as far as the destination, okay, there we go. We got some clarification there. We don't actually, so if you don't have software developers, we don't actually do the implementation for you, but we have several partners that we connect you with who can help you build out all the implementation. So yeah, really common. We have several really good partners, both here in the States and in Europe, and they would be happy to help work with you to do the actual instrumentation and setup. All right, I'm gonna wait again because the questions keep coming in right as I don't wait quite long enough.
Now we've got the awkward wait.
That's right. I'm okay with awkward silence though.
I'm not.
Do you have any questions, Dan? I mean, you're an expert on this.
No, I'd just like to say, like the working relationship with RudderStack, like from Pachyderm's perspective, has been like amazing. Like the team's been great. We've had like very few issues with any of the kind of integration side of things, and any of the like destination integration side of things as well. You know, like making sure data's flowing through to our destinations as it should. Anything we found has been like incredibly quickly dealt with. And you know, I can't fault them in one sense for that. So brilliant. Thanks Eric and the rest of the team there for helping us like be successful with this, you know.
Of course. All right, well, that is a great note to end on. Feel free to shoot any questions our way via email. You can just send them to me, eric@rudderstack.com, and I can loop Dan in if you have a question for Dan. But really appreciate everyone participating today. Thank you for the questions, and we will follow up via email.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone who joined.